Let's give him one.
The voice that whispers in your ears are the screams that you fear. The mind you cannot defy is the heart that rules mankind. The people who made you are the gods that will save you. I am Steve Travesty. I am the voice. The ghost in the machine. Ghost in the Machine. Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Studio A.
Right here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome back, everybody. I just real quick, I'm going to connect to Gloria Taylor here in just a second. Before I do, want to make a reminder to everybody to, bear in mind about those archives. $5 a month is not a lot of money, and to consider the donation that keeps the show going and helps the servers grow, because the bigger you get, the more bandwidth you get, the more servers you need, and otherwise, if you don't get enough bandwidth, the show will start garbling and sounding bad, and all kinds of problems will occur. So, your help is needed. Just wanted to make a real quick reminder of that.
Hello.
Hello, Gloria.
Hi.
Hi, this is Royce. How you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Been a long time no hear.
Oh, well, I'm here all the time, so, just give me a ring.
A lot of times I'm just busy. I see you log in, but I'm, taking care of business every day, so they say. So, today we're going to talk about a priestess gathering. Can you tell us a little something? Before we go into that, why don't you tell everybody about your website and any other places of contact where they can reach you?
Well, my name is Gloria Taylor Brown, so the easiest website to contact me is gloriataylorbrown.com. But I also have a marketing company called Alchemy Arts, and I have a program which I'm working on right now, which is called A Gathering of Priestesses. And the website for that is Gathering of Priestesses, drop the A, .com. And it's a site that has information and videos. We've got stuff on YouTube. So I'll be talking more about that in a few minutes, but it's A Gathering of Priestesses.
Okay, well, before we go into that, I just had a note come in from the owner of Revolution Radio, wanted me to tell everybody that the data center hosting chat has scheduled network maintenance for October 9th that may result in up to 30 minutes of downtime. It says start Thursday, October 9th, 1700 UTC, 10 a.m. PDT, end Thursday, October 9th, 2100 UTC, 2 p.m. PDT. Impact, we might experience up to 30 minutes of intermittent downtime during the course of the maintenance window. So if anything happens during any of the shows today, you guys will know why.
Yeah. Well, we always have to pause for technical difficulties.
Yeah, I unfortunately had to pause before the show ever started last night, and it turns out I was the cause of the technical difficulty.
Well, there's always the case of operator error.
Basically what happened to operator error. So tell us about these gatherings a little bit more in detail. I mean, you've already been having them on the Google Hangouts, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I'm on number 27. So basically, the story about them is that there's a book that came out in March of this year called Stepping Into Ourselves, an anthology of writings on priestesses. And it was put out by Goddess Inc., which is Candace Kant and Ann Key out of Nevada. And I was one of the authors in there, along with a number of my friends. And it's a wonderful book. It's it's quite long. It's about 500 pages.
Ouch.
There's over 50 authors in there, and the writings range from poetry to historical dissertations on, priestesses in Greece and what a priestess does today. And anyway, it's a great book. And they were looking at the marketing of it. And I said, well, I do marketing. And what I'd love to do is put together a telesummit. And at that point, I was thinking in terms of literally a telesummit, which is voices only, of the authors. I mean, here I've got 50 authors to put together. And so I got in touch with the authors and started talking to them, and started looking at the Google Hangout program, which if anybody hasn't tried that yet, is really incredible. I mean, the idea that we can broadcast video to the entire world for free is something that blows my mind. I mean, I've been in video since I've been in video a long time. And, we used to pay $10,000 to $50,000 for 30 minutes on video. And the idea that you can have 8 hours for free is just mind-boggling. So anyway, I went ahead, set up the program. I got 38 of the authors to agree to come on. I did two people at a time, 3 days out of the week, and I did 17 shows in a period of 5 weeks, and created basically a basis for this program, which is a Gathering of Priestesses. And then since then, I've been doing a weekly show on a Gathering of Priestesses, which I've been interviewing one individual author, which is ranged from Nicki, Scully, and Normandi, Ellis to I just did Rose Marcus, who is a brilliant evolutionary astrologer up from North Vancouver. And I'm just setting up dates going into January right now, where people are, wanting to be on the show, because we're getting about 150 views, which, doesn't sound like a lot, but it's 150 views they wouldn't have had sitting at home doing nothing. So we're doing that. And then out of it has come Priestess Magazine. And the first issue of Priestess Magazine is right this minute at the Apple newsstand getting approval.
Okay, now you were talking about 150 listeners. I take it those are live listeners, not archives.
No, that's primarily live listeners, yeah.
So you'd have probably, 6-7 times that much in archives, I would think.
Well, I would hope so. I know that I've had over 2,000 views for the shows on YouTube so far. I'm keeping an eye on that. But it's growing it's interesting. People are going back and watching earlier shows, and you'll see how the new show has a spike, and then the older shows have spikes that come after that. So people are going back and watching the earlier shows. So I'm quite pleased with it. And it's giving me an opportunity to work with women that I think are just fascinating. I mean, they're, as one woman who I was interviewing said, she says, I'm so humbled by listening to these women that you have been interviewing. I mean, they are brilliant, incredible. They've written, one of them has written 20 books. Another one has, created a nonprofit organization and has hundreds of thousands of followers. These are just, they're really women who are making a difference in this world.
Well, don't you and Normandi both put together, along with a few other people, a trip to Egypt every year as well?
Oh, yes. In fact, Normandy's going to be leaving end of this month. She leaves for Egypt. She'll be there the month of November with Nicki, Scully. I'm not going this year, so hopefully I'll be able to go back the next year.
Kind of devoting all your energy toward the hangout?
Well, I'm devoting my energy towards that, and I'm also devoting my energy towards the fact that my husband is in a nursing home with severe Parkinson's. And every time I leave town, he ends up in the hospital. So, part of being a priestess is being there for your relatives, I guess.
Well, especially your husband, I would think.
Especially your husband, yes.
I would hope if I was laid up in the VA, my wife would come see me on occasion.
Yeah. So anyway, because of the fact that I need to be close to him and take care of him. I mean, it's kind of different because he's a very independent man. He was a movie maker. He's done radio, and now he's not. And so I have to take care of him. So in what I look at it is this is my role as a priestess right now. And that everything I do comes out of that, so that it is, as I represent the divine here on earth, it is whether I am taking care of my husband or feeding him or changing his diapers or talking to him or updating him on what's going on in my life, or talking to the other patients there that are at the nursing home. It's all part of being a priestess.
Well, are you having any, I guess like interreactive priestess classes?
We're getting ready to do some. I'm working with the Mother House of the Goddess, which is out of Boca Raton, Florida, and with Goddess Inc., which is Candace and Anne. And what we're looking at doing is putting together basically a university. And in fact, I do have another university which has also approached us and would like us to put together courses. So we're going to be putting together some courses about how to be a priestess, how to be in the world as a priestess. Also about, we're kind of, we lean heavily towards the goddess religion, although we also have several Jewish rabbis who have spoken on our show. We have one Buddhist nun who's coming on our show. So we're not, religion centric. It's any expression of the divine. I suppose the only person we wouldn't have on would be an atheist.
Yeah, there's even some Christians you can get on nowadays that are more tolerant than what some of them used to be.
Yeah, I actually have a woman out of Atlanta, Georgia, that I've just been talking with, who's a Christian minister that wants to be on the show because she refers to herself as she's in the pulpit, and she refers to herself as a priestess. So, I mean, it's a time-honored position, and the priestess was always very, very important back when we go back in history. The priestess was the one that assisted, and in many ways, the priest had the position of being the interlocutory, the channel between God and the church. But the priestess also had that position, but she also was the one who went out and taught people how to grow food and how to take care of their children and how to keep people healthy. So it was a very much of a role where she was in the world as well as representing the divine here on earth. And we are still doing that. I mean, we are not separate from the world. We cannot go and sit in our ivory tower and say that, oh, well, I'm a priestess, therefore I don't have to work, because the electric company and the landlord doesn't like that.
Yeah, they really don't. And you're going to do that, you're going to do it in the dark, aren't you?
Yes, you are, in the dark and out in the corner. You can be out the priestess all you want, sitting out there on the corner and, at the corner of Walmart. But, we still have to make our living, and we have to realize that part of making our living as a priestess is being in integrity, even whenever we're doing our everyday work. So the fact that I'm doing marketing and advertising and what have you, I have to walk my talk when I do that. So it means I can't be cutthroat or competitive or out there to get somebody else. That it's just not allowed.
So you're aware of the fact that you're a reflection on other priestesses, in other words.
Right. And I represent, whenever I'm doing these shows, it's my responsibility to make sure that the people I put on these shows are in the magazine, are people that have the best and highest good in mind for our listeners, just like you do.
Right. Which I'm really, I don't know if people know this or not, I try to be pretty selective about my guests. I mean, I get a lot of them, but I do try to, at least with most of them, make sure that they have real heavy credentials because, I mean, there's so many people, if you don't have a certain amount of credentials, they don't even think you're worth listening to.
Well, even without that, I mean, basically, we only have so much bandwidth. I mean, it's a term from internet, but the truth is, as a human being, we have just so much bandwidth that we can take in information. And people like you and I are, in a way, the curators of that bandwidth. We're saying, okay, this is worth someone spending 60 minutes of their life on. We have to be in our integrity whenever we step into that position. And, you know this, that you've got to have someone who has something to say and is an expert in that field. You don't want someone on who's just, full of opinions and doesn't know what they're talking about. So, I know that you do a good job of curating who it is you're going to have on your shows, no matter what they're talking about. So, this is, in a way, it's like that's part of providing that information is to figure out what is the highest and best use for this next 30 minutes, 60 minutes of my time.
It's good you put it that way, too, because, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people walk out of a room after a TV show and say, well, that's 30 minutes of my life I'll never get back.
Right. And
you're pointing out that, the people care, in other words.
Yeah, the people care, and we have to care for them because if I watched, I don't know, some TV show, I won't mention its name, last night, and I kind of had that attitude when I got done. They had a lot of promotion on, and I thought, well, this might be interesting, and I watched it, and it's like, okay, that's 30 minutes that I could have done something else, even if it was just read a book.
It wasn't as good as the build-up made it out to be, I take it.
No, it was almost insulting. A lot of these sitcoms tend to end up being, the question is, how stupid can the man be in it?
Or the woman, but in any case, they usually try to play one side of. Some shows, they make them take turns.
Mm-hmm. But, this one, the people are supposedly very high achievers, and how they could be such high achievers and still be so stupid is incredible. So, and they waste my time. They wasted my 30 minutes of my time. I could have read an article out of Stepping Into Ourselves. I could have, talked to somebody on the internet. And it would have been more effective than sitting there and watching that show. I kept expecting it to get better. So it's our responsibility as people who are curating the work that is going on to the radio or onto the TV to make sure that we're presenting the absolute best we know how to present.
So when you're presenting this here on these gatherings, does any of them get into, working with your soul, for example, or working in the inner man?
Some of them do. A lot of it is about... we'll interview and find out where the path, the priest, how she's got onto the path of the priestess. That's always our first question. How did you get on the path of the priestess? And I don't care how they answer. They can answer, I'm not a priestess, or I'm not on the path, or whatever. But usually what they answer is, well, I was drawn to it, or it was something that I felt like I had to go on from early childhood. Or my grandmother brought me into this whenever I was a little girl. And so then they tell the story about how they were, the trials and tribulations or the joys and harmony that they went through. And what that allows is the women who are listening or the people who are listening to identify with them. They go, well, yeah, she's got a doctorate and she's this big fancy, but the truth is, she's gone through 2 bad divorces and, had a child die or whatever it was, so that there's an identification there and they can go, oh, I can see myself in her. I can see myself in her life. And then whenever we move into talking about the studies that the particular person, like with Rose Marcus, where we were talking about astrology, and she, brilliant astrologer. I have followed her for over 12 years, and I have her, she has a newsletter that she sends out every month that has everybody's sign in it and all the information about what's going to happen in the next month. And I don't know what I would do without it. I post it up and pin it up onto my wall so I can remember that, October 14th, we're going to have this, that, or the other thing going on in astrology. And, she's talking about it, and people got into really deep conversation about how astrology affects your life, or how you affect the astrology of your life, and whether or not, you could use astrology as a crutch. In other words, say, I can't help that this is the way I am because I'm a Scorpio. And it's like, no, you don't get off that easy. You've got to say, I have these Scorpio tendencies, and therefore I have to be aware of those and responsible for them. But we are responsible for our own actions. So in many ways, it is about the inner man, the inner woman. And it's about how we can be here in the world in the best way possible. Again, coming back to the same idea, highest and best use.
Yeah, I know that. For example, you can use astrology to build a religion that Christianity did. Mm-hmm. So not all uses are necessarily going to be positive, in other words.
Well, you can use it to... There's a lot of people that use it as an excuse. I did this because my, Mercury was retrograde. Well, get over yourself. If Mercury is retrograde, you're going to have more trouble communicating. You're going to have more trouble with radio shows. You're going to have more trouble with machines. You know that ahead of time. Therefore, you give yourself more time whenever Mercury is retrograde. By the way, Mercury is retrograde.
Well, maybe that explained last night. I wouldn't even know where it was.
Yes. Not only is it retrograde, but there's a huge... we had the full moon last night, which that means the lunacy was rampant. And the moon was, and it's we had the eclipse the night before, and that was a very strong effect all across the U.S. Did you get a chance to see the blood moon?
No, but I saw about it being written about and posted on Facebook.
Yeah, it was incredible. I went outside at 3:30 in the morning and and watched it, and it literally was a red moon.
Isn't there supposed to be something happening in prophecy that's attached to this red moon?
Yeah, but I don't follow prophecy a lot. I know that there are several things that, and I saw something about it in reference to the Ebola virus, but then there's so much conspiracy theory around the Ebola virus that, you can't hardly separate fact from fiction there.
There's a conspiracy behind almost everything.
The conspiracy theorists are incredible. Sometimes they're fun to listen to, but you have to really listen to them with an ear for when they go off the deep end. So,
like when they just suddenly jump from one thing into a conclusion that Evel Knievel couldn't have made that jump.
Yeah, right. It's like, no, I don't think that's so, but there's NSA is listening to us. So what? What are you saying that you don't want NSA to hear?
No, that is a good point. I mean, it has been proven by Edward Snowden that was true, but the whole point being is really, who cares? I mean, they're really only listening for certain things that's, has to do with terrorism, unless you're, talking something about that. Nobody really has the time because they got too many messages to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of it is that, frankly, the majority of conversation that's going on cell phones or internet or wherever are incredibly boring for anybody who's not the parties that are involved. I mean, I pity the poor person who would have to listen to my phone conversations or my text.
I think I'd pity the people that would be listening to my wife or reading my wife's text messages to her brother. Oh, George, you awake yet?
Yeah.
George, angry today?
Yeah. And not only that, the misspellings in the text are, have got to confuse the computer. So anyway, but yeah, those are all part of the general noise that you and I are trying to cut through. Because, it's like there's so much noise out there. It's like having what do you call those things where they break up concrete?
Jackhammer?
Jackhammer. It's like having a jackhammer going on right next to your head. And, we've got so many ways to contact people today. I mean, my earpiece just went off because somebody texted me. And I've got the internet up and I'm talking to you on Skype and I've got a phone in the other room that's liable to run. I turned off the ringer so we would be separate. But the truth is there's so much noise going on. And at a certain point, it's almost like you can't hear anything until it's like there's this one point that comes at you and you go, I want to hear that. I want to hear about spirituality, or I want to hear about priestess, or I want to know what it is that, this person is talking about. And then you can cut away that noise. That noise disappears. It disappears into the background and becomes, like the whisper of the freeway. And you can hear the noise, hear the sound that you really want to hear. For example, today would have been John Lennon's 74th birthday. And there's quite a few postings of songs from John Lennon, including the top 20 songs he ever recorded, which included Imagine. And I listened to that today. And, oh, my God, that is such a beautiful song. And it's just heart-wrenching. And that's the sound I wanted to hear. I didn't want to hear the telephone, the text, the whatever else was going on right that moment, but I could concentrate and I could be present with that beautiful music.
So you tuned to that one sound and flooded out the rest.
Right. And ignore the guys who were out in front of my house cutting the palm tree down.
Well,
thank God they got done before we had to do the interview.
Yeah, I've had the yard people show up here during the show, so I know what you mean. But what I wanted to ask you about is, could you tell me a little more about Mercury and what it means for it to be in retrograde? Because I hear the term a lot, but I know very little about it.
Well, what it is it appears that Mercury is going backwards through the signs to us. Mercury, the planet, does not actually reverse its direction. But it appears to us that it is going backwards. And when it does that, Mercury is in charge of communications. It's in charge of internet. It's in charge of anything to do with knowledge, wisdom. And so those things become confused. And it becomes more difficult for us to get our point across. Technology doesn't work so well, particularly these days whenever we're so surrounded by technology. And we find that, the printer doesn't print and the hard drive goes out on us and everything else. So those are things that are occurring to us. And sometimes what we realize is that if we can realize ahead of time that Mercury is retrograde, and in this case, I think it's retrograde through the 28th of October, it's like, okay, I'm going to have more trouble dealing with my hard drives. I'm going to have more trouble dealing with my printer. So therefore, I'm going to give it more time, and I'm not going to be so impatient, because most of the problem is going to be me.
Yeah. I've kind of been there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now we understand that about Mercury in the retrograde. What else is there about astrology that you might want to share that we might want to be looking for in today's world, especially in the near future?
Okay. Well, let me get something up here real quick. And I will give you something that, the things that's going on right now is we've got several different aspects of what they call strong aspects that are going on. And there's 2 eclipses this month. There's a moon eclipse, and then there's a solar eclipse. Now, the lunar eclipse is whenever the Earth gets in the way of the sun's light hitting the moon. And a solar eclipse is whenever the moon gets in the way of the sun, between the sun and the Earth. And what those do is they're like kind of like acupuncture treatments for the Earth. And so we've got Mercury retrograde from October 4th through, I think, like I said, almost the end. Frankly, I'm at the point where I feel like I was born under Mercury retrograde. And then we've got right around now, October 10th, Mercury retrograde is going into Libra. So it's going to be issues of partnership. So you may want to think about what you say to your wife before you say it.
Okay.
And here it goes through October 23rd. On October 11th, which I think is tomorrow. Is that tomorrow or the next day?
The next day.
Okay. Venus will oppose Uranus, and watch for something unexpected to do with finances, relationships, or social activity. As is typical of Mercury retrograde, serendipity is activated in a more obvious and striking way. Expect to bump into or reconnect with people you haven't heard from or seen in a while. By the way, I am reading from Rose Marcus's website, so don't think I know all this stuff. Venus is conjoining with Scorpio on the solar eclipse. That means there's going to be really intense relationship issues coming up. So we've got some strong aspects that are happening this month. And I'm not saying it in order to give people like I said, a crutch, but I'm saying it to give them a heads up. There's a lot going on out there in the astrological world. And whenever we look at it in the greater field against the galaxies out there, there's another aspect, because there is the aspect of where we are in relationship to the other constellations and the effect they have on us. And if you believe, you go, well, this doesn't have any effect on me. Yeah, right. Watch the tide if you think that the planets don't have any effect on us. Twice a day or 4 times a day, some places, the tide is either high or low. And that is completely and totally because of the moon. And your body is 90% water, and it responds to the moon just like the tides do. The solar flares that occur on the sun, they actually give warnings at NASA for your computers, to harden your computers against solar flares. So if you think your computer is going to be affected by it, I guarantee you're going to be affected by it. So all of these aspects are, they're out there, and they're things that are going on that we don't have any control over. In fact, we have very little control over anything. We can basically most of the time just be present. But to realize that they're going on, it's like ignoring. You don't want to ignore that there's a stop sign on the corner. When you get to the corner, you stop. You watch for the traffic, and then you go forward. You don't go right out into the middle of the traffic and get hit by another car. Same way with astrology. If you know that there's a stop sign coming up, you don't want to go forward. If there's an aspect that says, today is not a good day to sign partnership papers, you might want to wait till tomorrow.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, they think that it's just a bunch of bunk and they just go and live their lives any old way anyway.
Well, they may think that, but see, it does affect them. And the interesting thing, I've been studying astrology since I was, I think, 14 or 15 years old. And what I've noticed is that there is an aspect that people may not be their primary sign. People say I'm a Taurus and therefore I act this way. And then you'll get other people who say, well, I'm a Taurus and I don't act that way at all. Well, it depends on a whole bunch of things as to how you're going to react. I mean, what your rising sign is, where your Venus is, where your moon is, what the aspects are between those. Those are all going to make a difference. And for people who really want to know more about it, I highly recommend that they get a good astrologer to do their birth chart, not just the free chart you can do on the internet. And have them explain to them, these are aspects of what is going on. Astrology actually dates back about 4,500 years ago in India. And Vedic astrology, which is very different from Western astrology, is it's a fascinating topic that I know almost nothing about. I know enough about it to be aware that it exists and to have had my chart done. And I also know that in India that they would not consider the idea of opening a business, of signing a partnership, of creating a marriage without having done the Vedic astrology chart for that particular aspect of their life.
And if it advises against, they take its advice.
Yes. Yeah, the astrologer in India is regarded with the same level of professionalism as a doctor or a professor or someone like that. They are, they are people that are expected that, and they're held to sort of the same level of responsibility as well.
Yeah, I would imagine so, because they're dictating to people's lives.
Right. So someone who's trying to do it for gain will quickly be found out, and they will be prosecuted. So, I mean, they have an entire set of legal statutes around how you can be in the world if you're an astrologer, just like they do around being a doctor.
So it's kind of considered an academic.
Yeah, it's considered a profession. It's considered a very reasonable, responsible position to be in, like a counselor, a psychotherapist. You would also go to your astrologer. Now, here we have basically sidelined astrology, and it has become, in many ways, the playground of the amateur, because anyone can put themselves up as an astrologer, and if they have an ephemeris and the ability to go on the internet and do a chart, they call themselves an astrologer. Well, that's not a real astrologer. A real astrologer has spent years upon years upon years studying and understanding the different aspects of what it means to be an astrologer. The same way, we have people that say they're a shaman. Give me a break. You're not a shaman. Besides which, nobody wants to be a shaman. You become a shaman because you're forced into it, whether you're in Siberia or South America or New York City. You are a shamanic practitioner, possibly. But to be a shaman is to go through hell. I mean, it is generally to have to almost lose your life, or in some cases actually have near-death experiences, and then come back from them and to work for the people. But frequently a shaman is, crippled in ways that they, would not choose. So I think that one of the things, again, and we're going back to what I was saying earlier about being responsible about what we put out in the world, whether we're doing a talk radio show or whether we're calling ourselves a shaman or calling ourselves an astrologer, we have to be responsible for what we say at a level where we are at the level of a priest or priestess. So I go back to my basic point that as we represent the divine here on earth, we are the hands of God. We are the mouth of God. We are the eyes of God. How would you behave if you were the hands of God? You would behave very responsibly. You would choose your guests carefully because you know that you are representing God here on earth.
Well, I think really most people need to learn to these kind of rules, I think, also should apply to everyday life, because you're so unaware how little things can lead into big things.
Definitely. And the other thing to remember is you don't know when something you say is going to have a tremendous effect on someone. I used to do tarot readings. I did a lot of them. And I still do them, but not so much. And I did a tarot reading about 25 years ago for a woman here in California at that time. And, didn't think about it, but I probably did 30 tarot readings that day. She went home. She lived her life. She called me up about 2 years ago and told me, she says, "Do you remember that tarot reading you gave me?" And I'm going like, I don't even remember you. And I'm not even sure I remember being at that place. There's been so many. And she says, "You told me the most important thing I've ever heard in my life. And it shaped the way I've lived my life for the last 25 years.
But that could have just as easily been a negative impact as a positive.
That's right. So, if you're in that position of responsibility, and we are all in that position of responsibility when someone comes to us for advice. I mean, even if it's, how do I get from here to the store? If you send them through the ghetto and they get shot, it's your fault.
I never really thought about that as many times as I've given directions. I don't know why, it just never occurred to me, but you got a valid point.
Yeah, that it is, we are, if we don't know, it's our responsibility to say, I really don't know how to get there, or I really don't know what to do. There's no shame in saying, I don't know. I haven't been there. Or in the case of if you're providing someone with advice, you have to be able to really be careful the way that you are providing advice. And the idea that you're going to go out and buy a pack of tarot cards and a book that reads them and do readings and provide people with advice whenever you really don't understand what the cards are saying and you really don't understand people that much, can be very, very dangerous. We had one situation whenever I was working with Women of Wisdom up in Seattle, where we had a young woman who applied to be a tarot reader at our event. And she told this one woman that her son was going to die in a car accident in the next week because of what she read in the cards. Well, her son luckily did not die in a car accident the next week, but the woman was just petrified that, the tarot reader saw that she was going to have this terrible accident and her son was going to be killed. And it was just total irresponsibility on the part of the reader.
That reminds me, not long ago, about a year or so back, it was all over the internet that somebody's child had been kidnapped, and one of these self-proclaimed psychics or astrologers, whatever it was, copped up and said, "I'm a psychic, and I've envisioned that the child is dead already."
Yeah.
Oh, my word. That started a big, huge war.
I know people, in fact, I know two different people who work with police departments, who are psychics that work with police departments. They never state the person is dead until they find the body, even if they absolutely know it's true.
Yeah, that was kind of irresponsible on that person's part. And it doesn't really matter if she really was a psychic or not. If you can't produce a body, what would happen if she did get a false reading, even if she was normally right?
Well, the point is that even if the child is found, in fact, I think the child was found to be alive several days later. But that mother went through the hell of thinking that her child was dead, possibly, knowing in her soul maybe the child was still alive, but having heard this, she's, there's a certain amount of doubt there. Maybe my child is dead.
Certain amount of emotional damage.
Oh yeah, the trauma from that. I mean, you and I both are veterans, and we both know quite a bit about post-traumatic stress disorder. And but basically, that's what you're creating in that other person is post-traumatic stress. Maybe they don't express it whenever they're going through it, but the woman was told that her child might be dead, or the woman that was told that her son might be killed in an accident, have in effect had a stressful event occur that has changed their brain chemistry.
Yeah, and therein lies the problem. Is there's a little thing called dopamine in your brain that affects your pleasure center. There's also serotonin in your brain that has a big effect on your spirit, and you don't know what kind of chemical exchanges go through, and you don't know what it takes to get them back to normal balance.
That's right. And anyone who's ever had a head injury knows that you may have, if the effect of your head injury show up 40 years later. Whereas, and it's the same way with these kind of psychic damages. Someone in the old tradition, in the shaman tradition, in the Native American tradition, what it would be referred to is soul loss, because it's like someone has stolen a piece of your soul, and in that loss, you have cumulative effect where over a period of time, there's a certain amount of your soul has been stolen away. And, it's where people get to the point where they're totally depressed and they feel like they are, not able to cope with life. I've dealt with a few people who are suicidal, and without failure, they have had multiple traumatic stress points again and again and again where it feels like their soul has been stolen from them. And, if we had something where we recognized this earlier on, we probably could prevent more suicides. We could prevent more people taking antidepressants.
Well, therein lies part of the danger, if you ask me, is antidepressants. They've never been a cure, and they never will be a cure. And there's a danger to using them. For one thing, you become, I guess you could call it immune to them, where they're no longer, not depressing you. But by this time, they've also changed the chemistry in your brain significantly. And this is why a lot of times they'll readjust the medicine, and then they'll readjust it. And they've even had to try shock treatment in later stages. I mean, because once you get on a downhill spiral, trying to get on the back upswing is a trick.
It really is. And if you've also got some physical issues going on, or maybe you've got some, life issues going on, it's really hard to pull out of that downhill spiral. My friend Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton, the author of Biology of Belief, does a lot of work in this area around the chemicals that are in your brain and the effect of them, and how we affect the brain. In other words, it's like there's this, it's a triangle. We affect the brain. The brain affects the way we live our lives. The way we live our lives affects our brain.
So it also turns into a circle.
Right. It's exactly right. So, but the point being that every one of those things, it's like if you go out and you have a really pleasurable experience, say you went out to dinner with your wife last night and you not only had a lovely dinner, but at the end of the dinner, the waiter came over to you and said, we want this to be on us tonight because this is your anniversary. So your dinner is free. All right. So you had a beautiful dinner. And on top of that, you had a bonus of a gift. Your brain is flooded with dopamine. It's going, oh my God, this is so incredible. I've just had the most wonderful dinner, and I've just had my wife has been here, and she's the lovely woman that I've spent the last 30 years with. And on top of that, the restaurant recognized that and gave it to me. And so that has this very effect. The same time, if you went out, you had a lousy dinner, you fought with your wife across the table. At the end of the dinner, they bring the bill over. The bill is wrong. They've added more things, and then they fight about it with you. You had an awful experience. Well, that's going to affect your brain as well. Now, both of those things are
opposite extremes.
Yeah, but they're everyday events. And those everyday events express themselves in our lives. We don't see it how they're expressing ourselves, but they do. They affect us as we go forward. So, that's why I'm saying the idea of going back to the idea of being responsible about what we do. If we are responsible of what we do and we get to a situation, we realize that it's not working, that you heard your wife wrong or your wife heard you wrong, and you go, wait a minute, let's stop. Let's start over. I don't want to have this evening be ruined by us arguing. I think we have a misunderstanding here. Let's find out where the misunderstanding is and start over, instead of just going down that trail. And so those are things where we can step in as the conscious adult in our brain and take over and say, wait a minute, this is not going the way it should be.
Right.
I'm working on autopilot here, and let's make this thing right.
Okay. I hate to break this into you, Gloria, but a show that they're going to interrupt us in music in about 2 to 4 minutes. Is there anything you want to get out there before they do?
No. Well, I guess I'd like to invite everyone who would like to watch a Gathering of Priestesses. There are 10 shows that are up on YouTube if you'd like to take a look at them. And if you'd like to be on my mailing list and be part of it, you can register at a Gathering of Priestesses or steppingintourselves.com, either one. Also on Facebook. We are open and honest and accepting of anyone. So, it's not just for women, although I must admit to you that it's going to be very female centric. So, if you're looking for something where you can talk to the boys about the beers and cigars and fishing, we are not the right show.
It's going to be mostly talk about spirituality.
Yes, it is. And sometimes it's going to be pretty far out there. So.
Yeah, but it can also be pretty far in there. I mean, if psychiatry dealt more with spirituality, less with pharmaceuticals, they would probably get a lot further with their cures, in my opinion.
I agree. I believe that we have to treat the whole human. We cannot treat just the individuals. The biggest problem we have met with medicine today is doctors treat us like machines. Our hand doesn't work, so we go to the hand doctor. Our leg doesn't work, we go to the leg doctor. Our head doesn't work, we go to the head doctor. And all of them are so specialized they can't treat the entire machine.
I remember when I was younger, you used to go to the doctor's office. They'd have you stripped down and put on a gown, and they would examine you head to toe.
Uh-huh.
And nowadays you go in there, you see a primary caregiver, and they ask you about your symptoms. They do some information in the computer. They listen to your heart, take your temperature and your vitals, and then they recommend you to a specialist.
Right.
You don't get those physical checkups periodically anymore, for example.
Yeah, well, you should have the physical once a year, but the truth is, if you go to the guy for carpal tunnel syndrome, he is not interested in the fact that you also have carbuncles on your knees or, whatever. For example, I just had a knee replaced. Well, replacing that knee has caused a problem in my other hip. So now I have to go see the orthopedist about that. And so it's like everything is just a piece of it. So, we have to be whole people. We have to come at it from a point of being whole people. And that's why I believe that we have to come at it from a point of view of representing the divine here on earth, each of us as an individual.
Mind, body, and spirit.
You got it.
All righty. Well, folks, I want to take a quick minute to let everybody know at my site, www.talknowradio.net. Monday, I will be interviewing Carol 03. I'm sure most of you people are familiar with them. We're going to talk about the Black Star Project, and that's going to be at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. If y'all can't make the show, it will be put in the archive at my site as well as at YouTube, as well as this show is going to be archived. And by the way, Gloria, I intend to send you the link to it as soon as I get it done. It may take me a couple, 3 days, though, so be
That's
patient.
okay. That's okay. I'll put the link out on Facebook, and I'm the best place to reach me is on Facebook. I will tell you that I have reached 5,000 friends, so you have to follow me at this point. So, but the best place to reach me is on Facebook. I am on there probably 10 to 12 times a day.
You do know that Facebook, if you're not friends, will send your message to another folder.
Yes.
Okay. Just make sure you check for it if I send it.
Okay.
I heard the music, so I guess I better not try to slide any more in other than come see me tonight at 7 p.m. for the G. Edward Griffin, the creature from Jekyll Island, if you can. Y'all have a good one. Thank you very much, Gloria. I've really enjoyed this chat with you. And I'm going to say goodbye with that note. Y'all folks take care.
Listening to Revolution Radio.
You have a choice whether to be a madman or a bold genius. What's the difference? A madman is somebody who does the same action over and over and over for an unknown destiny. A bold genius is somebody who does the same action over and over and over again for a known destiny. That is why fortune always favors the bold. True titans of our times and of the past, who are bent on making most of their opportunities in life, are too busy to bother with luck. Luck is the good fortune you determine for yourself. So find the strength, have the knowledge, summon up